Good morning. May is ready with the microphone for announcements.
Okay, I have a couple things. First, if you do not have a church t-shirt and you would like one, there are some in the overflow. I think we have large, extra large, and 2Xs. There are a couple long sleeves in there, but they're mainly short sleeves. Also in the overflow, we have Operation Christmas Child boxes if you would like to pack those at your home. So please feel free to take any of the information that's back there for that. Third, there are college boxes. We have a list for college boxes. So it's pink and it's in the overflow. So if you would like to volunteer and donate for that, please do so. Fourth, Heidi asked for me to remind, if you were involved with a fair, you have any kind of bills outstanding, please make sure that you get those to Mark so we get that taken care of so we can tally up the final numbers for the fair this year. Thanks.
I want to thank everybody for helping with CARES. Our church does real good with that. Excuse me. And I'm sending around a paper for a sign up for potatoes. It's in the bulletin that we need 60 boxes of potatoes, so I'm sending around so we know we get our boxes. But CARES is very thankful for everything that our church does and helps with. And I'm thankful for all the volunteers that help me when I need it. Thank you.
Any others?
This afternoon is our harvest party out at our house, and we'd like to invite everybody here to come out and enjoy it. My delightful daughters have some wonderful games set up for us, and I know there'll be good food because there's a lot of good cooks in this group. So we hope to see everybody there, 4 o'clock. In the bulletin, it tells what's going to be furnished. So.
I believe that's all. Please stand for the call to worship. Come, let us celebrate the forgiving, reconciling love of God. Know that God's love is lavished upon you forever. Come, let us celebrate and praise the God of love. Amen. Done.
Good morning. Let's all turn to page 204, Victory, small book. Victory in Jesus. Calvary to save a man.
Joys and concerns. I do want to add my mom to the list. Jody took her for her cataract surgery, her second cataract surgery, and she seems to be doing well. Other than that, May, do you want to?
I want to thank everybody that worked at the football game. So I think it was better that we were in sessions today because of the awful rain. So that was helpful, but we got some cheer in there too. So thank you for everyone that participated.
Belinda, do you want to add anything to your dad?
Just prayers would be great.
Okay. I think that's it. Ryan?
Well, we're like a silent prayer. I'm gonna enter into silent prayer.
Dear God, dear God, thank you for your love, for the grace you freely offer. Help us to model your ways as we figure out our identity in you and set aside our own selfishness and speak the truth in love. Help us focus on our own responsibility so our actions won't be conditional. We know we can love and forgive because you did it first. Help us keep our eyes on you, Lord, and fill us with your grace and loving spirit. You are the best answer to our problems and the imperfections always. God, lift us up in your prayers and be with all those concerns that we heard here today, and hear us as we join together in the prayer that you taught. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. And give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever.
Please stand. Please turn to number 378 in the large hymnal, reading or singing verses 1 and 3 of Amazing Grace. Be seated.
Good morning. My name's Mike McFerrin, and it is my privilege to be here with you this morning, and thank you for inviting me. When you saw the scripture this morning, which is the parable, of course, of the prodigal son, you probably said, but I can say that story by heart. I know, but I hope to bring something different into it today as the Holy Spirit works in our hearts and our minds. I was on my way to referee my first fight, church fight. And I was on the way and thought, why in the world did I ever agree to doing this? And I believe God brought this to me, and it changed the way that I speak to people, changed the way I preached in my church, and ever since it's different because what God told me. And so I stood up, and the meeting was right after the worship service, and the people on this side and the people on this side were about as divided as you could get. So you can imagine it was really a spiritual worship experience in that day. And I said to people, I'm superintendent of the conference, and I come to give you an answer. Or you think I come to give you an answer. And they said, well, yeah. And I said, I will do that. And I took a blank piece of paper, and across the top was typed, we the undersigned promise to do exactly what Mike McFerrin says. And it looked like everybody's shoes squeezed in about 2 sizes. And then I put down, and I'm not here to give you answers. I don't have answers. And the answers that I do have are formed more by my upbringing, my background, my experience. And if I give you answers this morning, you can go home and disagree with them. But what I'd like to give you this morning, and every time I speak, is I'd like to give you a truth. Because if you and I agree that something is the truth, then the truth is not going to change. And it's going to have to be me and you that brings our life to the truth. Let's look at the parable of the prodigal son, something that we've seen probably since we were in Sunday school. And many of us can probably recite the scripture, or we know the first word. There was a man who had 2 sons. There was a man who had 2 sons, and the younger one said to his father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided the property between them. Now this is going to be important a little bit later. He divided the property between them. You know, and it's okay, when I leave that, I have no trick questions. Okay? Promise, I'm not going to trick anybody. And so when I leave a blank open, you can go right ahead and speak it, you know. And I understand I need feedback every now and then. The churches I've grown in, people say, were they amening, church? And no, we weren't amening. We were nodders. You know, if the speaker said something, yeah. And if you do that, I can tell you that will encourage me greatly. And I know the different degrees, because if I say something you really agree with, you look to the side, to the person beside you, go, maybe even with an elbow. He divided the property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living. Now, there were times most of my life, and I have to admit, I thought the wrong things about this. We know the evangelistic message that comes from this. We know the forgiving message that comes from this. I'd like to talk to you about the levels of ownership that are in this parable. Ownership of your marriage, ownership of your church, ownership of your little league team, ownership of friendships, ownership of what you have. If you would say, yes, I own that. My first impression of the younger son was, what a spoiled brat. He wasn't a spoiled brat. He was merely taking advantage of how he owned his inheritance. He owned his inheritance because he was entitled to it. Is the mic scratching something? Am I hitting something I shouldn't be? Oh, okay. Okay. In the Hebrew culture at that time, a living son could claim his inheritance before his father passed away. And this was divided up exactly the way that custom said to design it up. The younger son got 1/3 of the estate. The older son got 2/3 of the estate. Now I'll take it back and remind you about that first sentence. The father gave him his share of the estate, and so he divided the property between them. All right, older son got 2/3, younger son got 1/3. Not long after that, he went away. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. Okay. He owned that part of the estate on the basis of the fact that he was entitled to it. Do we see much ownership because of entitlement in our world today? Oh my heavens. I'm entitled. Not only am I entitled to things, by the way, where's the government? I'm entitled. Why isn't the government doing more? I'm entitled to this. Is it valid? Is it truth that I can own something by entitlement? Yeah. I can own relationships by entitlement. I have to tell you, I talked to a lot of married couples who came to my office because they were having trouble. And I'll tell you the ones that had the most difficult reconciling anything. They were the ones who carried their Bibles in. Because they were going to use their Bibles to tell people, to tell me what they were entitled to in this relationship. I'm entitled to this, and I'm not getting what I'm entitled to. And I'm telling you right now, any relationship that you have that's on the basis of being entitled, we'll find out what happens to it. In any relationship that you have because, that you own because you're entitled to it, you're in need. So he went and hired himself out to a citizen in that country who sent him to his field to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. Is there anything wrong with raising pigs? I could, this is one of those answers I could use, because if you disagree with me on this one, we got a problem. Is there anything wrong with raising pigs? No, there isn't. There was for this guy. Why? He was Jewish. He wasn't allowed to touch a pig. He wasn't allowed to eat anything that came from a butchered pig. If you own something on the basis of entitlement, like anything else, anytime you own something, you have to pay, right? If I own it, I have to pay. If you own something, if you own a relationship, if you own your membership on a team, if you own your workplace because you think you're entitled to, you're going to pay it with your integrity. He compromised his integrity. Was it my integrity? No, because I've spent some time cleaning up after pigs. I enjoyed the financial rewards of it. But this man paid with his ownership, with his integrity. If your spouse, my spouse is here, if I own this relationship on the basis of what I'm entitled to, is she going to think more of me or less of me? That's an answer. She's going to think less of me, isn't she? If you own your membership in a group, if you own a relationship, if you own your job on the basis of, well, I'm entitled to it, if you own it, are we entitled to things? Well, I think we probably are, but if I own it because of that, I pay for it with my integrity. You know people. Every single one of you here is old enough to know people who are owning what they have because they're entitled to it. And you don't think too much of them, do you? When he came to his senses, so what's the state of my thinking when I own something by entitlement? I'm out of my senses. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants. So he got up and went to his father. All right? He's changing He's changing his way of thinking, he's changing his heart, he's changing the way he's owning that responsibility, is he not? Is he not? Yeah. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. Did he, from seeing him from a long way off, did he know who it was? Yeah, he did. And he ran to him, hugged him, and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. And boom, but he has another part, right? That's not the end of it. But his father interrupts him. After that, his father interrupts him and says, but the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him, put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Did the father know who it was when he saw him from far off? Why didn't he bring the ring and the sandals and the robe with him? I don't know. That would be the answer. Here's what I think. I think he wanted to see the condition of his heart. I think he wanted to see his love was unconditional. I love my kid. I'm going to go to him. I'm going to hug him. I'm going to kiss him. I'm going to welcome him. But if he's still only in this relationship by entitlement, look what he says. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was lost or dead. He was dead. So where am I in my relationship with my wife if I claim the ownership of my marriage on the basis of what I'm entitled to? What is the state of our relationship? You can say it, go ahead. It's dead. That's the dangerous part about rights. I'm all for them. But if my ownership in anything ends with me being entitled to something, it can't last. Because it's lost or dead. He is alive again. He was lost and he is found. So they began to celebrate. Let's get to the second level now of ownership. First level of ownership is entitlement. Second level of ownership. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. And when he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. And so he called one of the servants and asked him, what's going on? Your brother has come. Your brother has come. Your brother has come. He replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. And the older brother became angry and refused to go in. Now I'm going to tell you, I spent most of my life, and it's been a long life so far. My wife and I were talking just about an hour and a half ago about how old we are. And for most of those years, I thought the old brother had a case. Right? Yeah! It would make me mad. I was an older brother. Am an older brother. Yeah! I have to tell you, Bill and Betty Lou taught me from the time I was little, that'd be my parents, my mom and dad, that I wasn't entitled to a whole much. All right? My mom figured I was entitled to 3 meals a day, and she did an amazing job of providing them. My dad thought I was entitled as a child to safety in my home and warmth. and love. And I had those things in abundance. But when I wanted to be treated like an adult, I had to make sure that I was no longer owning what was going on in my home, owning it by entitlement. It's the mark of a grown up. Until I'm a grown up, I've got to come to my senses, right? The older son owned it on the basis of the fact that he had earned it. Now you might say, well, Mike, if more people would earn what they've got instead of them, I agree, 100%. I was taught to earn. So were you, weren't you? Yeah. It's sort of how we live in rural, isn't it? Darn right. And here's this older son, and for most of my life, I'm thinking, you preach it, brother. But let's look and see what he paid for this ownership by what he earned. The older brother became angry and refused to go in, so the father went out and pleaded with him. In this parable, who does the father represent? He's representing God, so I'll call that to our attention right now. So let's look at this, and what's the father calling Mike to? I don't know what he's calling you to, so I'm not going to hazard a guess at an answer. But I don't think anybody's ever been called by God to own something limited to what they're entitled to. And the father went out and pleaded with him, but he answered his father, listen to this. Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. Do you see any problem with that? What was the first verse that I told us to remember? And he split the estate between them. Who's the them? The brothers. Whose goat was it? It was his. It was his goat. It was his goat. Did he earn that goat? Yeah, he worked hard. Do you think he did everything his father said? I got it. I'm going to toot my own horn. I was good. I was good. I was not afraid of my father, but you didn't cross my mom. Okay? The words that never passed out of my mother's mouth were, wait till your father comes home. We dealt with it right now. But I owned a whole lot because I was convinced I earned it. I wondered why my brother and my sister got to do things I never got to do. I can see by the look on the faces there are other older siblings here with the same thought. Because I'd earned it. It wasn't fair. I earned it. But look at this. Did he have a clear perspective of what the truth was? He had slaved. Is a slave 2/3 owner in an estate? No. I never disobeyed. I'm sorry. If it was a human, he disobeyed something somewhere. And you never gave me a goat. He was ready to think. Look what the father says. But when and then he says, yet you never give me a goat to have to celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours. See how he dissociated himself with it? Who has squandered your property with prostitutes, come home. You killed the fattened calf and call him. And the father said, my son, my daughter, you are always with me. And everything I have, can you finish it? Is yours. Oh, people. Me. About the time I start thinking that I've earned this. I've earned this. I've given enough. I've done enough. I've sacrificed my time. I've given and given and given. I've earned some respect. I've earned some benefit. I've earned. As soon as I start owning my relationship with my wife on the basis of what I've earned, I've lost a clear perspective of what our relationship is. And the same thing's true with us in our workplace. The same thing is true with us in our church. The same thing is true with us wherever we are, whether we're in a school or whether we're old enough to have been graduated from school. If I own it because I am sure I have earned it, then I do not have a clear picture of the reality of the situation. Should I earn? Absolutely. Question here is not the rightness or the wrongness of earning, the rightness or wrongness of entitlement. The question is, what do you own things by? See, there's one more level of ownership. The lowest level of ownership is entitlement. The next step up is I own it because I earn it. I love this parable because it goes around in a circle. When he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son, and make me like one of your hired servants. Not entitled, not because I've earned it. I'm trusting in your grace, Father. Isn't that what he was doing? He didn't know whether his father was going to kick him out. And all of a sudden, here comes this old man up and gives him a kiss and hugs him. And puts a robe on him. Not just the robe, the best robe. And the sandals and the ring on his finger, which meant, you are now mine again. We are father and son. Isn't that how God calls us? I'm not sure that I can pick a verse out where Jesus said, all right, here's this truth. Now go out and earn it. No, he told us what the work we had to do was. He called us to that work. But our response to that call is done by service, not by entitlement, or that we're going to earn anything of it. If you go home today and you say to yourself, well, that guy was old and he was sort of dumb, but at least he gave us some answers, then I didn't do my job. If you go home today and think, that guy was old, sort of stupid, but I think he was telling the truth. So what am I going to do with this truth? You see, what you will pay for ownership of service, and this is the hard part, it will cost me and it will cost you everything you think you've earned or are entitled to. Doesn't mean you haven't earned it. Doesn't mean you don't have a legal deed or legal paper that says it's yours. But in your heart, in my heart, I can't own my marriage with Robin because I'm entitled to it or because I earn it. Do I want to earn things? Yeah, I want her to be happy with me. But I earn it by serving. 100% total. Do you have a friendship? Do you serve? There is no Christian group called Victims for Christ. Doesn't exist. We victims sometimes? Yeah, we are. But how do we own our friendships? Do we serve? Or are we entitled and earned? The last thing about it, where is everybody at the end of the parable? Where are they? They're at the party, except for one person. This is convicting to me. Who's not at the party? The older son. So who's the prodigal?
Thank you, Mr. McLaren. Please stand for our final hymn, number 348, Softly and Tenderly.
And now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, through his power at work within us, to him be glory in the church and in Jesus Christ forever, from generation to generation. Amen.